when there was no vaccine, when teachers were not vaccinated, there was very little spread in schools. Yet here we are today, the governor's continuing to keep masks on children at a time when parents, I have heard from numerous parents, teachers, they want the masks gone. I was at a school the other day, Newfane School. We were taking questions from students, and a student asked me, do you think I'll be able to get this mask off before the end of the school year? I have teachers that haven't seen their kids' faces. They don't even know their kids, what they look like without the mask on. Kids don't know the teachers, what they look like without the mask on. So it is high time for Governor Hochul to lift the mask mandate for students. Now, she says she's going to wait till the winter break before making that decision. I wrote a letter to her this week, along with my Republican colleagues in our conference, to ask, what are the metrics that she is using to keep it in place, and what would the metrics be to lift it? Because I think teachers, superintendents, parents have a right to know, what is the data? We're always told we're using data. We're listening to the experts. Now I'm going to say something. It might be unpopular, but the experts have been wrong a lot over the past 2 years. And that's okay, because even experts are wrong. But the notion that we're told, don't worry, I'm relying on experts. Well, that doesn't make me feel reassured, because the experts have been wrong a lot during this pandemic. And when we're told we're relying on data, what data? I wrote a letter and I asked what data, because people like Mark Lori, the teachers here, and the parents should have a right to know, what are we trying to get to? What is the off-ramp? Because at this point, the worry is that these mandates could be here forever or could come back at any point, because we don't know what the data is that's driving any longer. And just last night, the Department of Health and the new health commissioner basically said, we don't have that data. We can't tell you what the off-ramp is. But don't worry, we're using data, we just can't share it with you. That is unacceptable. It's unacceptable if you're a parent, it's unacceptable if you're a superintendent, it's unacceptable if you're a student or a teacher. These superintendents have to make hard decisions. When it is lifted, they're going to have to still make hard decisions. They have a right to know what metric and data has been used and would be used to keep this mandate in place. I believe the mandate should end. I'm on the record as saying that. I think there's no reason to end it for businesses, but to keep it in place for schools. And we should lay out data so that schools can make this decision on their own, lift the mandate, unmask our kids, let them focus back on learning, especially, by the way, as we get out of winter and into warmer weather. There's a number of my school districts don't even have air conditioning, and kids were wearing masks at the start of the school year when it was 80 degrees in the classroom. It's just unconscionable. But again, I think the key takeaway that I want to drive home to the governor, who I might see in a very short amount of time here, is that parents and teachers and students and superintendents and the public, we're smart. Tell us the data you're using. Don't tell us you're relying on data. Don't tell us you're relying on experts, but then fail to disclose the data to the public. Because parents can make smart decisions on behalf of their child's education. Teachers can make smart decisions, and so can superintendents and school districts. But the way the governor's been handling it, in secret, not sharing data, admitting that we don't really have an off-ramp, we don't have any metric that we're really using that we're able to sort of unify behind, and then also saying we're relying on experts who have been wrong throughout the pandemic is not reassuring to students, to parents, superintendents, or to teachers. We need to end these mask mandates and share the data that's being used so school districts can make proper and smart decisions. We have elected school board members. They know their districts and their parents and their teachers and students far better than the governor and far better than Albany and the Department of Health at this point. So at this point, I do want to call up a friend of mine, I think a fantastic professional, and that is Superintendent here in Niagara Falls, Mark Lori.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, Senator, and I appreciate your kind words. And I want to begin by thanking you on behalf of our Board of Education for your support on this issue and on many other issues. School funding, school violence, special needs children. You have been the leader out in front of this issue, and I want to thank you publicly for your support. I also want to thank our 3 school board members who are representing our school board here this afternoon, Mr. Jimmy Kinsemi, Mr. Rob Bilson, Mr. Nick Villardo. Thank you very much for being here as well as the parents and community that have come out to be with us this afternoon. My message is very similar and quite in line with Senator Ortt. It's incongruous. It just doesn't fit that in the public, individual students can be unmasked, but when they walk through the doors of the school, they have to put their mask on. Especially incongruous with the fact that schools have proven time and time again to be the safest places of no transmission or barely any transmission, and yet we're still a group of students, 7,000 in Niagara Falls, that are singled out to continue the mask mandate. I'm asking, along with Senator Ortt, that this be lifted immediately. We, as he said quite eloquently, we have an elected school board who should have the right and responsibility for making the safest choices for kids. In schools, nothing happens without safety and order, and that is what this school board does first and does best, along with all of the school districts across Western New York. They worry and they focus on safety and order, and then of course the need for academic achievement. I ask that this be allowed to be a decision held in their hands, our hands. They accept this responsibility, they'll take this responsibility, and they'll move forward making the best decision for kids. Whether it's popular or not, they'll make the best decision to keep kids safe and well protected. That's their calling and that's their oath. So I would also like to state that I think it's a bit of an affront to the intelligence of our community, who has now had 2 years of this pandemic to be able to make choices. It's time to put the choices back in the local municipalities' hands, and then ultimately in the hands of the parents and the students. We need to give them credit. I state to you today, Senator, that the minute the mask mandate is lifted, we will take an approach with this school board that is perfectly welcome and fine for anybody who feels the personal need to wear a mask. I will make sure that no one is shamed, bullied, ridiculed if they choose to do that, but it will be their choice. It will be their choice. And I know I stand with my school board in making that announcement. We've said that at school board meetings. I'm on the record as saying that. The school board is on the record as saying that. Actually, I wanted to thank our parents and our community on this issue because it is divisive. And our school board has kept things calm, and our community, while stating their opinions vocally, have done it with dignity and class, telling everyone that we can disagree, and we can disagree peacefully and with class and dignity, even though we're on different sides of an issue. So once again, I thank you for your support. One of the people that has showed dignity and class in her forthright commitment to this issue, and I mean that sincerely. She has voiced her concerns at our board meetings, not always in agreement, and I appreciate that, but she's done this in a dignified, classy, professional manner. She's a grandparent, hard to believe that. She's a grandparent and a parent. She represents parents in the city and in the school district. Ms. Lisa Dugan, I'd like to ask you to speak on behalf of the parents.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Laurie. Thank you, Senator Ortt, for allowing me to be here today. What I want to talk about is, first of all, as he said, I have grandchildren in the area. A year and a half, our grandkids were forced to be locked down. They were quarantined. They were stuck at home. They had to e-learn. They had no sports. They had no clubs. They couldn't see their friends. This took a huge toll on their mental health. I think the parents thought that by masking their kids and sending them back to school was a small price to pay right? To get them back into some sense of normalcy. I'm here to say that that price was too high. Our kids are still dealing with mental health issues because of these masks. They have depression, they have anxiety. The masks are not saving them from experiencing this. In addition, there's a lot of health issues from wearing masks for a long or extended period of time. You know, think about it. You're oxygen deprived. You're breathing back in your poisonous carbon dioxides. And think about these kids who are wearing these masks over and over again and the bacteria that's on these masks. I don't think we are doing them any favors. I have a 5-year-old grandson, and he goes to 79th Street School. I take him to school every day, and it saddens me to put a mask on him. I can't even tell you how sad it makes me to put that mask on, and I rip it off his face as soon as I pick him up. He's not learning facial expressions. He is not learning social cues. I think about all the other kids and how, for the last 2 years, how behind are they in their education? Are they ever going to be able to get caught up on this? I think we've been so focused on the mask, I think their education has been put on the back burner. He comes home from school, he's tired. I would say that was probably, you know, lack of oxygen. He's angry, he lashes out. And I gotta be honest, I can't blame him one bit. I think if I had to experience it, thankfully I have not had to wear a mask. But if I had to experience that all day, I would feel the same way. You know, these kids, they want their lives back. That's what they want. And I think that we owe it to them to give it to them. I think about little kids in daycare, you know, 2-year-olds who are being forced to wear these masks. They don't understand this. They don't understand, they just understand that they don't want to wear them. Disabled kids, you know, they've had a lifetime of challenges and now they're being forced to wear masks. It saddens me. I want to say again, it's time for the educators, the teachers, the schools to get back to educating our kids. It's time for our kids to be able to breathe again and to be able to smile again and make friends again. That's really all I came here to say. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you again for allowing me to be here.
Lisa, thank you very much. You know, she said something that was interesting, and I'll close out and then certainly open up to any questions from members of the media who are here. I think for most adults during the pandemic, you think of the mask as something, you know, that's very transitory or temporary. You know, you wear it for the half hour you're in the grocery store. You wear it, you know, God help you if you're on an airplane for a couple hours. You wear it, you know, when you're running in this, you know, when you go to the bathroom from your restaurant table. But most of us have never worn a mask for 8 hours straight. I don't think I have in the entire pandemic. I don't know what my state would be after that, day in and day out. And that's true for many of the adults, obviously, in schools as well. So I think, to Lisa's point, you know, we are asking our kids to do something that most of us, even at the height of the pandemic, did not have to do. And now we're asking them to do it when no one else is doing it. And I just, again, want to come back to this point of, if the data was there, the data would be shared. If the information, the science was there, it would be publicly shared. And to say after 2 years at this point that we don't know what the metric is to stop this, we don't have the off-ramp, that tells me one of two things. Either the people in charge aren't the experts and don't know what they're talking about, that 2 years in we could not have a data and a metric to tell us when this ends, or there's something else driving it. Either which way, parents have had enough, teachers have had enough, superintendents have had enough, students have had enough, and we're here to advocate for the students. That's really who I'm here for. I've had enough. And it is time for the governor. She doesn't need to even tell us the reason, just end it, because everyone gets the reason. The reason is it's high time to lift this mandate on these children and get back to educating and learning and allow our teachers and school districts to do what they have done for years, for my entire life. And they didn't need Albany mandates to help them protect their students, and they don't need it now. And parents certainly don't need that either. So with that, I want to thank, again, the Niagara Falls School Board, the superintendent, who've been great, and as well as Lisa and the other parents who are here Thank you for being here. I know how important this is to you. I know how important it is to your students, your grandkids, your kids. And just know, there are people in Albany who get it and who want this to end and are fighting very hard to get us there. So with that, I will take any questions.
Senator, with the mention of mental health, that's been talked about a lot.
Sure.
Even, when this is, when the mask mandate ends, what implications do you foresee for years to come for students? And what efforts, can be done to try to help them recuperate?
Sure, that's a great question. I'll try to answer it in a way that makes sense at the moment, because we could probably talk about it for an hour. And to your point, we will be talking about this. I think we're going to talk about mental health aspects for students, healthcare workers. The pandemic's going to have mental health impacts for lifetimes. I don't think it's just going to go away. I know folks, I was a combat veteran. They served a year in a combat zone, and they deal with the mental health impacts of that for the rest of their lives. So I don't know that this would be any different, certainly for healthcare workers, for emergency responders, teachers, or students. You've had students that have lost years of their childhood. You have 3-year-olds. I don't know what the impact on a 3-year-old of wearing a mask for a year is, but parents will figure it out real quick. Teachers are going to figure it out. They'll be living with it for the rest of their careers. And I think it's going to be important that once we lift the mandate, it isn't just, it's all over. I think when we talk about funding, when we talk about school nurses, mental health, child psychologists, psychiatrists being able to be in schools, mental health resources for districts like Niagara Falls is going to be critical. And it's going to be even more critical. It was critical before the pandemic, if I'm being honest. It's going to be even more critical. And I don't think we yet know. And that's why it's so important to me to get the masks off, because we don't yet know. A kid who's 17, I don't know, maybe his brain is more, or her brain is more developed. But a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, what is the impact of them wearing a mask all day? Are they going to be afraid to have the mask off? Are they going to feel comfortable in a world without masks? That's a real concern that I have. And so, yeah, we're going to be dealing with this for a long time, governmentally, locally. And who's going to be dealing with it most? The same people we're here talking about today, parents and teachers. They will deal with this. They will see this. I remember talking to teachers for years about the summer brain drain. Kids would leave school. Unfortunately, in certain cases, they didn't have the resources back home. They'd show back up, next year, and the teachers were like, holy cow, these kids have regressed. And it took them 2-3 months just to get them back to where they were. What's the regression going to be on the mental health side, or even academically, after the last several years of COVID learning, of distance learning? I used to say that the only distance learning was kids were distanced from learning when they were home. They learn far better when they're here. And again, when they're out in public and they see people at a Bills game or a Sabres game, no mask. But they walk through the doors here, get that mask on, and it just doesn't. They're smart enough at 10 and 11 to figure out this doesn't add up. This isn't right. And so if they're smart enough to figure that out, we should be too.
Thank you. And Superintendent Roy, if I could, the senator made a great point in that you're, boots on the ground, seeing these kids face to face. You're really the one, handling all of this, navigating it. So is there a sense of frustration with, say the governor when, maybe she doesn't have that same face-to-face interaction, and maybe she doesn't understand the gravity of what the mask mandate has on her students?
Yeah, sure. All the senators' points are great, by the way. Yeah, there is. I think what has happened in the pandemic, and what I think is true to human life, is when we don't know something, we become anxious. We become uncertain. We become not confident in our next move. So when we don't know what the next step is, or when the next date is, it breeds more uncertainty, more anxiety, and more not knowing. And in the time when we've experienced this for 2 years, the anxiety, what is it? What does it do? How could it hurt? What's the cure? That's all built up in people. Now not knowing a date certain or having a bifurcated, well, the public can do it on one day and the schools, what does that mean? I think that just contributes to the not knowing. And I think that contributes to the anxiety and the stress that the pandemic brought to everyone. And I like to say, we're a trauma-informed district, trauma-informed care for our students. We've been preaching that from prior to the pandemic. But in a trauma-informed way, we look at the children's, what they call ACEs, adverse childhood effects that they have. Now, every student has an ACE, or an adverse effect. Now, that's coupled with, unfortunately, poverty, drug abuse, neglect, and it just keeps compounding and compounding. So the sooner the better. It'll allow us to intervene. We've read studies that it's about 4 years in English language art, 4 months, I'm sorry. It's about 4 months in English language arts of regression and 5 months in math of regression for each of the years of the pandemic. And that's exacerbated with students who come from poverty. And Niagara Falls is one of those districts. We understand that. We don't walk away from that. But the sooner the better. We don't need any more anxiety of when is it going to be? We don't know. What do we have to do? Where do we go? Let's just put it to rest all once and again. Bring it back to the locals.